The knife wasn't real. Amara would learn that hours later, when the adrenaline finally left her system and she could think straight again. But in that split second, with the blade glinting against her throat and some madman's fingers digging into her arm, all she knew was raw, primal fear that made her legs forget how to work. And her husband, Jin-woo Park, the man who'd barely spoken 10 words to her in their 5 months of marriage, the man whose name was always followed by whispers about his situation, was standing by their floor-to-ceiling windows in their luxury apartment. Before we dive in, beautiful people, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe. It's the best way you can support us as we continue delivering captivating stories that'll keep you hooked every single day. And the expression on his face, Jesus. That look made her forget the knife existed. Release her now. The intruder snarled in Korean. Jin-woo's answer came in perfect English, and his tone could have frozen the sun. You have exactly 5 seconds to remove your hands from my wife before I remind you why people fear my family name. The man sneered, pressing the blade tighter. The mighty Park Jin-woo. Word is your all image, no substance. Word is your just, he didn't get to finish. Amara barely registered Jin-woo's movement. One heartbeat, he was across the room. The next, the intruder was slammed against the marble floor, the knife spinning away, and Jin-woo's knee was crushing the man's chest with lethal precision. You threaten my wife. Each syllable dripped with violence. You put your filthy hands on what belongs to me. Give me one reason I shouldn't end you where you lay. Jin-woo. Amara's voice cracked, terrified not of the stranger anymore, but of this version of her husband she'd never seen. His eyes locked onto hers, and what burned there made her heart stutter. Rage, possession, terror, and something else, something fierce and desperate that weakened her knees. Did he hurt you? He kept his knee on the intruder, but his voice softened when speaking to her. Amara, look at me. Tell me he didn't hurt you. She managed to shake her head, speechless, because how was she supposed to process this when just yesterday he'd eaten breakfast without acknowledging she existed? Police sirens echoed in the distance. Someone in the building must have called. But Jin-woo didn't react to them. He was staring at Amara like she was his entire world. You're trembling, he said, and finally released the gasping intruder. Jin-woo crossed to her in 2 powerful strides, and then his hands were framing her face, tilting it toward the light, examining her for injuries with an intensity that felt almost violent, except his hands were shaking. Tell me you're unharmed. Tell me. I'm okay. Amara's voice was barely audible. Jin-woo, I'm okay. But you were supposed to be in Tokyo until Friday. How are you even here? I knew. The words seemed torn from his chest. I was sitting in a boardroom discussing a deal worth billions. And something just hit me, this terror, this certainty that you were in danger. Like my chest was being crushed. And I just left. Cancelled everything. Chartered the first plane. Because I had to. His forehead pressed against hers. I had to make sure you were safe. But why? Amara's voice broke. Why would it matter? This isn't. We're not even real. You married me for show. You don't even want women. Everyone says everyone is a fool. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. And the raw intensity there stole her breath. Everyone has believed lies about me for years. And I let them because the truth was inconvenient. But you, his jaw clenched. Anyone who touches you answers to me. I don't care what they think they know. I don't care what they believe. Touch what's mine and I'll destroy everything they love. The police flooded through the door then, shattering the moment. But as Jin-woo moved away to handle the authorities, as Amara collapsed onto their white sofa with a blanket draped over her, shaking shoulders, all she could think was, who the hell did I marry? Because this story doesn't begin with knives and confessions and emergency flights. This story begins 6 months earlier in her parents' modest house in Lagos, where Amara's entire future was about to be bartered to rescue her family from financial destruction. If you want to understand how a Nigerian woman and a Korean crime family heir went from a frigid arrangement to something so intense it defied every rule they'd made, stay until the very end, because what comes next will shatter you, rebuild you, and make you believe in the impossible. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon. Your support means everything. Now, let's rewind to where this all started. Being the oldest daughter meant inheriting burdens you never chose. Amara had known this since childhood, watching her mother work herself to exhaustion, seeing her father's pride crumble under mounting debt, understanding that her aspirations only mattered if they served the family's survival first. But she'd never imagined it would lead to this. "His name is Park Jinwoo," her father announced, refusing to meet her gaze. "He's Korean, 34 years old, heir to the Park business empire. Worth more than we could count in 10 lifetimes." Amara froze in the living room doorway, her brain rejecting what her ears were processing. "Papa, what are you telling me?" "I'm telling you he's offered to marry you." Her father finally looked up, and the shame burning in his eyes cut deeper than fury. "In return, his family will eliminate our debts. Every single one. You'll live in Seoul. You'll never struggle again. You're selling me." "Don't dramatize this," her mother interrupted sharply. "This is a blessing. Do you understand how many girls would kill for this opportunity? Then offer it to them." Amara's voice climbed despite her efforts at composure. "I don't want to marry someone I've never met. I don't want to abandon Nigeria. I have plans here." "I have what?" Her father stood abruptly. "What plans, Amara?" "A degree that's earned you nothing because there's no work. A boyfriend who can't afford your transport fare. Dreams that won't cover your mother's surgeries or your sister's school fees." "That's cruel." "Cruel?" Her father's laugh was hollow. "Nothing about this is fair. But life isn't fair, and I've exhausted every option. The investors pulled out. The banks gave us 3 weeks before they seize everything. This house, your sister's education, your mother's healthcare. Everything. Unless I secure capital, and Mr. Park has provided it in exchange for your hand in marriage." Amara felt tears threatening, but wouldn't release them. "And what does this Park Jinwoo gain? Why would someone that wealthy need to purchase a Nigerian bride?" Silence. The kind loaded with secrets. "Mama, why does he need a wife?" Her mother's mouth pressed into a hard line. "There are rumors circulating about him in Korea, about certain preferences. He needs a wife to silence the gossip." "You need stability. It's mutually beneficial." The truth crashed over her like ice water. "He's gay. You're forcing me to marry a gay man who needs me as window dressing." "We can't confirm that," her father said quickly. "And frankly, does it matter? You'll live like royalty, Amara. He's guaranteed you'll have independence, your own life, everything you need, except love. Except freedom of choice. Except the future I was building." Her voice fractured. "I was starting my graduate program next semester." "I was going to your graduate program. Costs money we don't possess," her mother stated flatly. "Money Mr. Park is providing. Stop being selfish and consider this family." "Selfish?" Amara stared at her mother, stunned. "I'm the one being selfish?" "The contract is finalized," her father said quietly. "The initial payment has been wired. You fly to Seoul in 2 weeks." The world tilted beneath her. "You signed without consulting me?" "I did what was necessary." Her father wouldn't look at her. "And you'll do the same." Amara fled the room before they could witness her breakdown. Seoul assaulted every sense Amara possessed. The cold sliced through her coat like razors. The airport was a monument of glass and technology and Korean script she couldn't comprehend. And everywhere, people stared at her dark skin like she was an alien specimen. "This city is insane," her friend Chioma whispered beside her. She'd insisted on accompanying Amara as support, draining her savings for the flight. "Are you certain about this?" "No." Amara's voice was dead. "But what alternative exists?" They cleared immigration and found a man in an impeccable suit holding a sign with her name. "Miss Amara," he said with a respectful bow. "I am Assistant Lee. Mr. Park apologizes for his inability to meet you personally. Business matters required his immediate attention." Naturally. Even collecting his purchased bride ranked below business. The drive to Gangnam was surreal. Seoul looked like science fiction, neon bleeding across rain-slicked pavement, towers that seemed to pierce heaven, everything moving with ruthless efficiency. It was stunning and sterile and completely overwhelming. The building they stopped at looked more expensive than Amara's entire neighborhood. Mr. Park's residence, assistantly announced. Penthouse floor. Your luggage will be delivered momentarily. The penthouse was obscene. Walls of windows overlooking the glittering city. Furniture that resembled modern sculptures. Everything white and steel and impossibly immaculate. It looked like a gallery, not a home. Mr. Park will join you for dinner tonight at 8. The restaurant is called Sora. A car will collect you at 7:30. Please dress appropriately. Then he vanished and Amara was alone in her gilded prison. Amara. Chioma squeezed her hand. We can still run. We can find another solution. But they couldn't. The money was transferred. The debts were cleared. The contract was binding. I'll manage. Amara lied. This is just a transaction. I can handle transactions. She'd been sitting alone at the restaurant table for 47 minutes when he finally appeared. The other patrons, wealthy Koreans, dripping in luxury brands, had been shooting her sympathetic glances for the past 20 minutes. The servers circled with growing discomfort. Humiliation scorched through Amara's veins like fire. She was preparing to leave when the restaurant fell silent. Amara glanced up and saw him. Park Jin-woo moved through the space like he commanded it, which he likely did. Tall, devastatingly handsome in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her father's entire debt. His features were sharp, almost predatory in there. Perfection, high cheekbones, strong jaw, lips that looked incapable of smiling, and his eyes, dark, calculating, dangerous, swept the restaurant before landing on her. Amara's breath stopped. The photographs hadn't prepared her for this. For him. He reached her table without rushing, and when he spoke, his English was flawless. Miss Amara. You're late. She blinked. Excuse me? I specified 7:30 arrival. It's now 7:47. Punctuality demonstrates basic respect. Fury replaced shock. Amara stood abruptly. You're 47 minutes late to meet the woman you paid to marry, and you're lecturing me about punctuality? Something flickered across his expression. Surprise, perhaps. I was detained by, I don't care. Amara grabbed her clutch. Tell assistantly to book my return flight. Tell my father this arrangement is cancelled. I'd rather starve than marry someone who lacks basic decency. She made it 4 steps before his hand caught her wrist. The contact sent electricity through her. Nerves. Wait. Release me. Please. The word sounded like it physically hurt him. You're correct. My behavior was inexcusable. Please sit. Allow me to restart. Amara should have kept walking. Should have trusted her instincts. But something in his voice, a crack in that perfect armor, made her hesitate. 5 minutes, she said coldly. Explain why I shouldn't leave immediately. He released her instantly, hands raised slightly. Up close, she could see exhaustion shadowing his eyes, tension in his jaw. He looked like a man barely maintaining control. I was late because I was in an emergency meeting with my board, he said finally. They've been challenging my decision to marry someone they consider inappropriate. Inappropriate, Amara repeated flatly. Because I'm Nigerian. Because I'm black. Because you're not what they expected. Because this marriage threatens their carefully manufactured story about who I am. He paused. I criticized your timing because I'm terrible at human interaction. And I reverted to business instincts. It was inappropriate. I apologize. You're terrible at apologies. No. I'm terrible at most human connections, which is precisely why I need this arrangement. His expression remained neutral, but his hands clenched briefly. The rumors about me are damaging business relationships. International partners are uncomfortable. The board questions my capability. I'm exhausted from defending myself constantly. What's the actual truth? Amara asked quietly. Does it matter? He leaned back, studying her. You're here because your family needed rescue. I'm here because I need legitimacy. This is transactional. Pretending otherwise is wasteful. The word should have stung. Instead, Amara felt something else. Recognition. Here was someone equally trapped. Fine, she said. Then let me establish my terms. I'll play the perfect wife publicly. I'll smile for media, master Korean customs, wear the appropriate clothes. But privately, you treat me with respect. You appear when you commit to appearing. You treat me like a human being, not a problem you purchased a solution for. Can you do that? Something shifted in his expression. Yes, I can manage that. Then we have an agreement, Mr. Park. Jinwoo, he corrected. If we're becoming married, use my name. Jinwoo. The name felt foreign in her mouth. Strange. And you may call me Amara. Amara. The way he pronounced it, carefully, like he was memorizing its rhythm, made something flutter in her chest. After they ordered, Jinwoo said, I know you hold a degree in economics from the University of Lagos. I know you speak English, Yoruba, and Igbo. I know you plan to pursue your master's before your family's circumstances changed. I know your favorite dish is jollof rice, which we won't find authentic versions of here, but I've identified a West African restaurant in Itaewon that approaches close. Amara didn't know whether to be impressed or disturbed. You researched me. I research everything. It's how I've survived in my position. Well, you missed something, Amara said. My ambitions aren't dead, just postponed. I'll play your wife, Jinwoo. But I won't disappear into this role. And when this arrangement concludes, when you no longer need me, I'm reclaiming my life. When this concludes, he repeated softly. You're already planning the divorce. Aren't you planning it? He was quiet for a long moment. No. I don't approach anything halfway. If I'm marrying, I'm staying married. Divorce would damage my reputation worse than the rumors. Amara laughed bitterly. So I'm permanently trapped in a loveless marriage to a man who might not even desire women. What a romantic tale. Love is for children, Jinwoo said flatly. What we have is superior. Clear boundaries. No complicated emotions to create problems. Amara should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt empty. What a lonely existence. The dinner continued with careful, formal exchanges. By the end, they'd established guidelines. Separate bedrooms, minimal physical contact beyond what appearances required, weekly dinners to maintain the illusion. It was practical, efficient, everything Jinwoo preferred. It was also the loneliest agreement Amara had ever made. When he drove her back to the penthouse, Jinwoo walked her to the elevator with rigid formality. The wedding is in 2 weeks. I've hired a coordinator. You'll have fittings, Korean language instruction, etiquette coaching, media preparation. It will be demanding. I can handle demanding. I believe you. He paused. Thank you for not fleeing, for giving this an opportunity despite how terrible I am at being human. Before Amara could respond, the elevator doors closed, and she rode up to her golden cage thinking, this is my existence now. But what neither of them realized was that loneliness was about to become their smallest problem. Because arranged marriages built on transactions had a tendency to ignite when no one was watching. And some fires burned so intensely they consumed everything in their path. The wedding was a production. For 100 guests, most strangers to Amara. A ceremony that cost more than most people earned in 5 years. Flash bulbs from media outlets Jinwoo's publicist had carefully curated. Amara wore a custom gown that cost more than her childhood home and smiled until her jaw ached. And through it all, Jinwoo stood beside her like marble, his hand on her waist only when cameras were present, his expression perfect and hollow. At the reception, his business associates congratulated him with barely masked curiosity. The Korean socialites who'd been competing for his attention regarded Amara with thinly disguised contempt. And Amara smiled and nodded and performed her role while dying internally. You're performing well, Jinwoo murmured during their first dance. His hand on her back was impersonal, mechanical. The media is eating this up. I'm thrilled I'm performing adequately, Amara said sweetly, loud enough only for him. His jaw tightened. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? She met his eyes. Isn't that all this is? A performance? He didn't answer, just held her through the dance with careful distance. And when it concluded, he disappeared into discussions with business partners while Amara smiled at strangers and wondered how she'd survive this. That night, back at the penthouse, Jinwoo walked her to her bedroom door. You did well today, he said formally. Rest well. I have an early meeting. Jinwoo. Amara stopped him before he could leave. Can I ask you something? He turned, guarded. What? The rumors about you. Are they accurate? Silence stretched between them. Then, would it matter if they were? I want to understand what I'm facing. I want to know if this, she gestured between them, if this will always be nothing. Something flickered in his expression. Pain, maybe. What do you want me to say, Amara? That I'm going to magically fall in love with you? That this arrangement will transform into a fairy tale? Because I can't promise that. I don't know how to be what you need. I'm not asking you to love me, Amara said quietly. I'm just asking if you'll ever truly see me. Not as your solution, but as a person. Jinwoo stared at her for a long moment. I see you, he said finally, his voice rough. More than you realize. But seeing you and knowing how to respond are completely different things. Then he left, and Amara stood alone in the corridor, her heart racing with something she couldn't identify. The first month of marriage was arctic. They maintained separate schedules, ate separate meals, existed in the same space like ghosts who never intersected. Jinwoo worked obsessively, 20-hour days that meant Amara rarely saw him. And when she did, he was polite, distant, every inch the business partner she'd agreed to become. Amara tried to build something. She enrolled in intensive Korean classes, started online courses toward her master's, explored Seoul with the cautious wonder of someone who knew she didn't belong. And she called home weekly, lying to her mother about her happiness while her father inquired about Jinwoo's business prospects. The loneliness was suffocating. You look miserable, Chioma said during one video call. She'd returned to Lagos after the wedding, but checked in constantly. Amara, if this is destroying you, I'm fine. You're not fine. You're trapped in a marriage with a man who treats you like furniture. That's not fine. It's what I agreed to. Amara forced a smile. And it's not terrible. The penthouse is beautiful. Seoul is fascinating. I'm learning the language. It's fine. But it wasn't fine. It was slowly suffocating her. The cracks appeared in the second month. Amara was preparing breakfast, something small just for herself since Jinwoo always departed before sunrise when he materialized in the kitchen. He looked exhausted, his normally immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. You're awake early, Amara said carefully. Couldn't sleep. He moved to the coffee maker with mechanical precision. I didn't mean to disturb you. You're not disturbing me. This is your home. It's your home too, he said, not looking at her. You don't need to behave like a guest. Don't I? The words emerged sharper than Amara intended. Jinwoo, I've been here too. Months, and I still don't know where anything in this kitchen belongs. I have a bedroom I sleep in and a closet full of clothes someone else selected. This doesn't feel like my home. It feels like an expensive hotel. He turned then, something flickering in his expression. What do you want from me? I don't know. Amara set down her tea with more force than intended. Maybe acknowledge that I exist. Maybe have a conversation that isn't about schedules or appearances. Maybe admit that this is strange and difficult. And neither of us has any idea what we're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, Jinwoo said coldly. I'm maintaining our arrangement as agreed. Right. The arrangement. Amara laughed bitterly. God forbid we actually be human with each other. She left the kitchen before he could respond, her heart pounding with frustration and something else she refused to name. But she felt his eyes on her as she walked away. Felt the weight of something unspoken between them. Things shifted after that morning. Small changes. Barely noticeable. Jinwoo started returning home for dinner occasionally. They'd eat in careful silence initially, but gradually conversation began to emerge. Small things. How was your day? Did you complete your language lesson? The forecast looks pleasant this weekend. He asked about her classes, her progress with Korean, whether she'd found the West African restaurant he'd mentioned. It's decent, Amara told him. Not like home, but decent. The owner is from Ghana. She asks about you sometimes. Wants to know if the legendary Park Jinwoo actually exists or if I invented you. What do you tell her? That I'm still trying to determine that myself. Something almost resembling a smile crossed his face. The small changes accumulated. He started leaving notes when he had to depart early. Just practical information, when he'd return, whether she needed anything. But it was something, an acknowledgement that she existed. Amara started keeping the Korean news playing in the morning, knowing he'd watch it over breakfast. Started stocking his preferred coffee. Small gestures that felt ridiculous, but somehow necessary. They were learning each other. Slowly, carefully, like two people trying to decode a language neither spoke fluently. And then, 3 months into the marriage, everything detonated. Amara awoke in the middle of the night to sounds in the living room. Crashes, a man's voice speaking rapid Korean. She grabbed her phone with trembling hands, about to call security when her bedroom door exploded inward. The man who entered was young, desperate-looking, and holding a knife. Everything after that blurred. The cold blade against her throat. Her own voice screaming Jinwoo's name. The intruder dragging her out to the living room. And then Jinwoo appearing like something from a nightmare. And the look on his face. Release her now. You have exactly 5 seconds. And then chaos. Violence. The intruder on the floor, the knife spinning away. Jinwoo's hands on her face, checking for injuries, and the terror in his eyes. Raw, desperate, absolutely terrifying in its intensity. I knew. I was in the middle of negotiating a merger worth billions, and I felt this panic that wasn't mine, and I just knew. He returned for me, Amara thought numbly. He abandoned a billion-dollar deal and chartered a plane because he sensed I was in danger. Why would it matter? She whispered. This isn't real. Everyone has believed lies about me for years, Jinwoo said, his voice rough. But you're my wife, Amara. Mine. And anyone who threatens you threatens me. The police arrived. Collected statements, arrested the intruder, apparently a disgruntled former associate seeking revenge. Amara answered questions in a daze, wrapped in a blanket, while Jinwoo stood beside her like a guardian, his hand on her shoulder. When they finally left, when the penthouse was quiet again, Amara stood in the middle of their destroyed living room and started trembling. Everything that hadn't registered during the crisis crashed over her now. Amara. Jinwoo was there immediately, pulling her against his chest. You're safe. I have you. I thought he was going to kill me, she whispered into his shirt. I thought he didn't. You're safe. His arms tightened around her. I won't allow anyone to hurt you ever. Do you understand? Amara pulled back enough to look at him. Really look at him. At the fear still shadowing his eyes, the tension in his jaw. The way he was holding her like she might vanish. The rumors, she said quietly. About you. They're not true, are they? Jinwoo's expression shuddered. Amara, are they? He was quiet for a long moment. Then no. They're not true. They never were. Then why? Because it was easier. He released her, stepping back, and she immediately missed his warmth. In my world, in my position, people make assumptions. And I allowed them because the truth, he stopped, jaw clenching. What's the truth? Amara asked softly. The truth is I'm not skilled at relationships, at emotional connections, at being what people need. He looked away. The truth is I watched my parents destroy each other with love, and I vowed I'd never allow that to happen to me. So I built walls. And when people started assuming things about me, I let them because it meant they stopped expecting me to feel things I didn't know how to feel. And us. Amara's heart was pounding. What are we? I don't know. He met her eyes, and the vulnerability there nearly destroyed her. I told myself this was purely transactional, just an arrangement. But then you moved in and you were everywhere. In my kitchen making tea, learning Korean, asking about my day. And I didn't know how to handle that, how to handle you. So you avoided me. So I avoided you, he agreed. Because I didn't know how to be around you without what? Without wanting more than what we agreed to. The confession hung between them like something alive. I want more too, Amara whispered. I didn't expect to. I thought this would stay transactional. But then you returned tonight. You chartered a plane because you sensed something was wrong. And I can't pretend anymore that this is just an arrangement. Jinwoo stared at her. Amara, I don't know how to do this, how to be, then we'll figure it out together. She stepped closer. Because I don't know how to be a real wife either. We can figure it out together. I'll probably fail at it, he said roughly. I'll work excessively and forget to communicate and revert to business mode when I'm uncomfortable. And I'll probably call you on it, and we'll argue, and we'll figure it out. Just like that? Just like that. For a long moment, they just stood there, staring at each other in the wreckage of their living room. Then Jinwoo reached out, cupping her face with a gentleness that made her chest ache. I'm going to kiss you now, he said quietly. If you don't want. Amara pulled him down and kissed him first. It was nothing like she'd imagined. It was desperate and clumsy and perfect. It tasted like coffee and relief and the beginning of something neither had planned for. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jinwoo rested his forehead against hers. This changes everything, he murmured. I know. I'm probably going to be terrible at this. Probably, Amara agreed. But you'll try. And so will I. And maybe that's enough. It was enough. It had to be enough. Because this story, this impossible, unexpected, beautiful story was just beginning. The transformation wasn't instant. Jinwoo didn't suddenly become perfect. He still worked excessively. Still struggled with emotional expression. Still defaulted to business mode when uncomfortable. But he tried. He started returning home for dinner every night. Started asking about Amara's day and actually listening to her answers. Started leaving little notes. Thought of you during my meeting. Coming home early. That made her smile. Amara started learning his patterns. The way he got quiet when stressed. The way he'd stand at the window staring at Seoul when he was thinking. The way he'd reach for her hand without seeming to realize he was doing it. They had their first real fight 3 weeks after the break-in. Something stupid about Jinwoo canceling plans to take an emergency call. Amara accused him of reverting to old habits. He accused her of being unreasonable. They both said things they regretted. And then Jinwoo did something that shocked her. I'm sorry, he said, finding her in the bedroom where she'd retreated. I prioritized work over you again. And that's not acceptable when I promised to try. I overreacted, Amara admitted. I know your work is important. You're more important. He sat beside her on the bed. I'm still learning that. But I mean it, Amara. You're more important than any deal or meeting or merger. I need you to be patient with me while I figure out how to demonstrate it. I can be patient, Amara said softly. As long as you keep trying. I'll keep trying, he pulled her into his arms. I promise. The changes accumulated. Jinwoo started taking Sundays off, something his assistant claimed he'd never done. They explored Seoul together, discovering hidden restaurants and quiet parks. He held her hand publicly. Now, not for appearances, but because he wanted to. At night, they fell asleep in the same bed, wrapped around each other like they'd been doing it for years instead of weeks. I never thought I could have this, Jinwoo murmured one night, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. This kind of connection. I convinced myself I didn't need it. What changed? Amara asked. You, he kissed her forehead. You refused to let me hide. You pushed back when I tried to maintain distance. You made me want to try. I'm glad I pushed. So am I. Amara turned in his arms to face him. The rumors will be problematic, you know. When people discover this is real, that we're actually together. Let them talk, Jinwoo said. I don't care anymore what they think. The only person whose opinion matters is yours. And what's my opinion? I'm hoping, he said, pulling her closer, that you think I'm worth the trouble. Amara kissed him softly. You're definitely worth the trouble. 6 months into their marriage, Jinwoo took Amara back to Nigeria to meet her family properly, not as the transaction he'd purchased, but as the wife he'd fallen in love with. Her father opened the door and stared at them, at how Jinwoo's arm was wrapped around Amara's waist, how she was leaning into him, how they looked at each other. Papa, Amara said softly. I want you to meet my husband properly this time. Dinner was awkward initially. Her parents clearly didn't understand this new dynamic. But as the evening progressed, as they watched Jinwoo help Amara in the kitchen, laugh at her jokes, look at her like she hung the stars, understanding dawned. You love her, her father said quietly when Amara stepped out to take a call. Actually love her? Yes, Jinwoo said simply. More than I thought I could love anyone. I'm sorry, her father said, and there were tears in his eyes. I'm sorry I sold her to you like property. I thought I was rescuing the family, but I nearly destroyed my daughter's happiness. You didn't destroy anything, Jinwoo said. You gave me the greatest gift of my life. I just had to learn how to appreciate it. That night, lying in Amara's childhood bedroom, she asked, "Do you regret it? That we started the way we did?" "Never," Jinwoo pulled her closer. "Because every day I get to choose you. Not because of a contract or obligation, but because I want to. Because I love you. And that means everything." Amara kissed him in the darkness of her childhood room, in the place where she'd once cried herself to sleep over this arrangement, and thought, this is how love stories are supposed to work. Not perfect from the start, but willing to become perfect together. 1 year into their marriage, Park Industries held its annual gala. The entire Seoul elite would be there. The press would be circling. And this time, Amara wasn't nervous. She wore a stunning gown, emerald, Jinwoo's favorite color, on her, and stood beside her husband as he greeted guests with confidence she'd earned. "You're staring," Amara murmured as they took their seats for dinner. "Can't help it," Jinwoo said, not looking away. "You're the most beautiful woman here. You're biased." "Absolutely," he brought her hand to his lips. "And I don't care who knows it." The whispers had long since transformed from speculation about his preferences to fascination with their love story. The cold air who'd melted for his arranged bride. The Nigerian woman who'd captured Korea's most eligible bachelor's heart. During his speech, Jinwoo did something unexpected. "Before I discuss this year's results," he said, his eyes finding Amara in the crowd, "I want to say something personal. A year ago, I made the best business decision of my life. But it wasn't until recently that I realized it was also the best personal decision of my life." He extended his hand toward Amara, and she rose, moving to stand beside him with her heart in her throat. "Amara," he said, still in English so she'd understand every word. "You entered my life as a solution to a problem. You became my wife because of contracts and obligations and mutual benefit. But you became my everything because you refused to let me hide. You saw past every wall I built and loved me anyway. You taught me that loving someone doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger than you ever imagined." Tears were streaming down Amara's face now. "So I want everyone here to know," Jinwoo continued, his voice rough with emotion, "that this woman beside me isn't just my wife in name. She's my partner, my best friend, the person I choose every single day. And I am the luckiest man alive because she chooses me back." The applause was deafening, but Amara didn't hear it. She only heard Jinwoo whisper, "I love you," as he pulled her into his arms. "I love you too," she whispered back. "Even when you're terrible at being human." He laughed, that rare, genuine laugh that she'd worked so hard to coax from him. Especially then. They kissed in front of Seoul's elite, in front of cameras and gossip columnists and everyone who'd ever doubted them. And Amara thought, this is what happens when two people refuse to accept that their story is supposed to be cold. Sometimes the impossible becomes inevitable. Sometimes the arrangement becomes the love story. Sometimes you just have to be brave enough to choose each other every single day. 2 years into their marriage, Amara discovered she was pregnant. She'd been feeling off for weeks, exhausted in a way that Korean winter couldn't explain, emotional in ways that caught her off guard. When the test came back positive, she stared at it for 20 minutes in their bathroom, hands shaking, heart racing with something between terror and joy. Jinwoo found her there, still holding the test, tears streaming down her face. "Amara?" His voice was sharp with concern. "What's wrong? What happened?" She couldn't speak, just held up the test with trembling hands. Jinwoo froze, stared at the test, then at her, then back at the test. His expression went through a dozen emotions in seconds: shock, fear, wonder, and finally, something so tender it made her sob harder. "We're having a baby," she whispered. "Jinwoo, we're having a baby." He dropped to his knees in front of her, his hands framing her still flat stomach with a reverence that stole her breath. "We're having a baby," he repeated, and his voice cracked. "Amara, we're having a baby. Are you happy?" she asked through her tears. I know we never talked about this, never planned for this, and I know you're probably terrified because I'm terrified and… I'm terrified, he interrupted, looking up at her with wet eyes. I'm absolutely terrified. But I'm also happier than I've ever been in my entire life. He stood, pulling her into his arms, and they stood there in their bathroom, holding each other while the reality of their future settled around them like snow. The pregnancy was difficult. Amara struggled with severe morning sickness that lasted well into her second trimester. Jinwoo became obsessive, hiring the best doctors in Seoul, researching everything about pregnancy, rearranging his entire schedule to be home more. You're hovering, Amara told him one afternoon when he appeared at her side for the third time in an hour with water, crackers, concern etched into every line of his face. I know, he said, not moving. I can't help it. You're carrying our child, Amara. I'm allowed to hover. I'm not made of glass. No, he said softly, sitting beside her on the couch. You're made of something much stronger. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to worry about you every single second of every single day. She leaned into him, letting him pull her close. I'm scared too, she admitted. What if I'm not good at this? What if I can't do this? Then we'll figure it out together, Jinwoo said, echoing the words she'd once said to him. Just like we've figured out everything else. One day at a time. When they found out they were having a daughter, Jinwoo cried. Actually cried, tears streaming down his face as he stared at the ultrasound image like it held the secrets of the universe. A daughter, he whispered. We're having a daughter, Amara. Yes, we are, Amara said, watching him with her own tears falling. And she's going to have you completely wrapped around her tiny finger. Good, Jinwoo said fiercely. That's exactly how it should be. They named her Zuri. It meant beautiful in Swahili, and when the nurse placed her in Amara's arms for the first time, tiny and perfect and impossibly precious, Amara understood why people said love could break you open and rebuild you all at once. Jinwoo stood beside the bed, staring at his daughter like she was a miracle he couldn't quite believe in. Can I? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. Of course, Amara said, carefully transferring Zuri into his arms. Jinwoo held his daughter like she was made of glass and starlight, his entire body trembling with the weight of new fatherhood. Hi, Zuri, he whispered. I'm your dad. And I promise, I will spend every day of my life making sure you know you're loved. You're wanted. You're perfect. Amara watched her husband hold their daughter, watched this man who'd once been cold and distant transform into someone tender and open, and thought, this is what love does. It doesn't just change you. It remakes you entirely. 3 years into their marriage, with Zuri now a toddler who had indeed wrapped her father completely around her tiny finger, Amara graduated with her master's degree. Jinwoo sat in the audience, with Zuri on his lap, both of them wearing matching proud smiles, and when Amara walked across that stage to receive her diploma, the applause from her family of 2 was louder than everyone else's combined. You did it, Jinwoo said that night, pulling her close while Zuri slept peacefully in her room. You got your dream back. We did it, Amara corrected. I couldn't have done this without you, without your support, without you picking up the slack when I had exams, without you believing I could. I always believed you could, Jinwoo said. From the moment I met you, even when I was terrible at showing it, I knew you were capable of anything you set your mind to. Even loving you? Amara asked teasingly. Especially loving me, he said seriously. That was the hardest thing of all, and you did it anyway. 5 years into their marriage, they hosted a party. Not for business, not for appearances, but just because. Friends, real friends they'd made together. Chioma, who'd flown in from Lagos with her new husband. Jinwoo's colleagues who'd become genuine friends. The owner of the West African restaurant who'd become like family. And as Amara stood on their balcony, watching Seoul glitter beneath her, feeling Jinwoo's arm wrap around her waist, hearing Zuri's laughter floating from inside where she was playing with the other children, she thought about that terrified girl who'd arrived in this city 5 years ago. That girl who'd believed she was being sold. Who'd thought she'd spend her life in a loveless marriage. Who'd been certain she'd never find happiness in this cold, foreign place. You're thinking too loud, Jinwoo murmured against her ear. Just thinking about how far we've come, Amara said. About how this all started. With a contract and two people who had no idea what they were doing, Jinwoo said. And now? Now he turned her to face him, and the love in his eyes still took her breath away after all this time. Now we have everything. A daughter who owns my heart. A partnership that's stronger than anything I could have built alone. And a love that started as an impossibility and became the most inevitable thing in my life. Amara kissed him as Seoul sparkled around them, as laughter drifted from inside their home, as their daughter called for them to come back to the party. This is what happens when you refuse to accept the story you're given and write your own instead. This is what happens when two people choose each other not once, but every single day. This is what happens when an arrangement becomes so much more than anyone ever planned for. The impossible becomes possible. The transaction becomes the love story. And sometimes, just sometimes, the fairy tale is real. If you loved Amara and Jinwoo's journey from cold arrangement to consuming love, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment telling me your favorite moment. Was it the knife incident, the first kiss, the pregnancy reveal, the gala speech? Your support keeps these stories alive, and I read every single comment. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next story, because love doesn't always start perfectly, but it's always worth fighting for. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.